What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 13 top 36 running back rankings. I will give you guys a heads up. I'm not going to be updating these later on in the week like I normally do. Going to be out of town, spending some time with the family for Thanksgiving, but just wanted to throw that out there. We'll continue to answer questions throughout the week if we do get updated information. But let's just dive right into tier one here. Obviously, a stacked week at the running back position, limited injuries, no bye weeks. The position was already strong. We're going to start off here with my running back one, and it is going to be Saquon Barkley. It's not a great matchup here against the Ravens, but he has just been the clear-cut top fantasy running back this year. He is the running back one in points per game by over 3 PPR points. He's blowing out the rest of the competition. He is my running back one. Then my running back two is Devon Achane. And if there's someone who can compete with Saquon for the RB1 spot, it is Devon Achane when Tua is the starting quarterback. In the games that Tua has started, he's averaging 23.2 PPR points per game. If Tua is healthy, Devon Achane is a locked-in high-end RB1 every single week. Then I have Joe Mixon going up against the Jaguars. The rushing efficiency has definitely been rough as of late, but I think this could be a get-right game here against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have allowed the second most points per game to the running back position. On the season, Joe Mixon is the RB2 in points per game. I think this is a good spot for him here in Week 13. Then I have Jahmyr Gibbs going up against the Bears. On the season, he is the running back 5 in points per game. The Lions, as per usual, are number 1 in implied points. They're 10.5-point favorites. This should be another favorable game script for these running backs. As a Bears fan, I just know on Thanksgiving I'm going to be watching Jahmyr Gibbs just run all over this defense. I like Jahmyr Gibbs here as a high-end RB1. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Alvin Kamara going up against the Rams. On the season, he is the running back 4 in points per game. He has a ton of pass-catching upside, leading all running backs in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. Even though, you have some of these other weapons down, the Saints' offensive ceiling isn't super high. Alvin Kamara is still going to be force-fed, going to be super involved as a pass catcher, and I think he is a locked-in RB1 play. Now, moving into tier 2, going to start off this tier with Derrick Henry. Seems a little weird not having Derrick Henry in tier 1, but as of late, he hasn't had quite the ceiling we saw early on in the season. He's actually scored under 15 PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games, still hitting double digits, not tanking in your lineup, but it's just another tough matchup here against the Eagles. They've allowed the 4th fewest points per game to the running back spot, so he's still my running back 6, still a lock in your lineup, but like I said, just not hitting those high ceiling games as consistently as he was early on. Then I have Josh Jacobs, whose season arc has kind of been the opposite. Kind of struggled early on, was not getting into the end zone, has been absolutely balling out over the last 5 weeks. 20 plus PPR points in 4 of the last 5. Solid matchup here against the Dolphins. Josh Jacobs locked in top 10 running back. Then we have Bijan Robinson coming off of his bye week. Now, this is not a good matchup. The Chargers have allowed the 5th fewest points to the running back position, but Bijan Robinson has put up 20 plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. Like I said, coming off the bye week, I think even in a bad matchup, Bijan Robinson is still a really nice option. Then I have Chase Brown going up against the Steelers. Another spot here where it's not a great matchup here for Brown, but in 3 games with no Zach Moss, he has just been absolutely force-fed, and it has led to very consistent fantasy production, 26.7, 22.4, and 19.3 PPR points. After Chase Brown, going to go with Kyren Williams going up against the Saints. Now, this is a very good matchup on paper. The Saints have allowed the 5th most points per game to the running back spot. On the other side, though, Kyren Williams has not been all that great as of late, under 12 PPR points in 4 straight games. Now, my concern for Kyren is that if you continue to struggle, you continue to not be the most efficient option, now we're getting into some fumbling issues, how long can you secure that just complete workhorse workload? And I think on most other, teams with different coaches, I think we would have already seen some sort of split with Blake Corum, getting more usage. But Sean Payton just seems very loyal to Kyren Williams. Seems like he wants that one running back to just shoulder the entire load. So I would expect him to hold on to that. But if I did have a concern to throw out there, that would be my worry that we see Blake Corum a little bit more moving forward. After Kyren, I'm going to go with Breece Hall going up against the Seahawks. He had kind of been struggling a little bit. Wasn't showcasing the ceiling games, hadn't been getting into the end zone prior to his Week 12 bye. In Week 11, he dropped a 31.1 PPR point game. So starting to get back on track. I guess the hope here is that the Jets offense as a whole looks better coming out of the bye week. I'm not super optimistic, but I think he's still like this back end RB1 area. So my running back 11. Then I have Kenneth Walker going up against the Jets in that same matchup. He started off the season really strong, has fallen off a little bit. Not like he's completely tanking in your lineup, but has not hit 14 points in the last 4 games. I think he's been between like 13 and 14 for 3 straight weeks. Just a couple more guys in this tier. We have Chuba Hubbard going up against the Buccaneers. I've been someone who's been a little bit too low on Chuba throughout the season. I'm not making that mistake anymore. It's a good matchup. The Bucs have allowed the 9th most points per game to the running back position. He has put up 15 plus points in each of the last 3 games. Even against the Chiefs, he's hitting 15 points in a really, really bad matchup. Bryce Young is looking better. Jonathan Brooks was pretty much a complete non-factor in his first game. I like Chuba Hubbard, and I think he belongs here in tier 2. And then the final guy in this tier, I think a lot of people are going to think this is too low. I have Christian McCaffrey going up against the Bills. Now, on paper, this is a great matchup, no doubt about it. The Bills have allowed the 3rd most points per game to the running back position. But I don't think Brock Purdy has a great shot of playing this week. When you look at, some of the Vegas betting lines, the 49ers implied point total, they're like sub 20 points in that number, which makes me think that Vegas is not expecting Brock Purdy to play. And if Purdy is not playing, the ceiling and floor of this offense just takes a massive hit. And CMC's played 3 games. He's only averaging 13 points per game, hasn't gotten into the end zone yet. The efficiency has not been there. So those are my concerns with Christian McCaffrey. If Brock Purdy was playing, I would definitely jump him up a lot. He'd probably be towards the top of this tier 1 area, but I'm not going to let the matchup completely just like sway everything, just given the fact that he hasn't looked all that great. This 49ers offense hasn't looked all that great. So those are my thoughts on Christian McCaffrey. Now, moving into tier 3, going to start it off with James Cook. On the season, he is the running back 9 in points per game. I think a lot of people have kind of been concerned about this 49ers defense. On paper, they are not a bad matchup for opposing running backs. They're actually top 10 in points per game allowed. I don't think James Cook is necessarily going to have like the workhorse workload of some of the guys ahead of him. You're going to have Ray Davis, Ty Johnson kind of working in, but I still think he is a very strong high-end RB2. A guy kind of in a similar spot, David Montgomery going up against the Bears. He has been very consistent. For someone who coming into the season was going to be pretty touchdown dependent, he has hit 12 plus PPR points in 10 of his 11 games. I will say keep an eye on his shoulder injury. They have a short week playing on Thanksgiving Thursday, so something to monitor, but seems like he's trending towards playing, and if he does play, he's going to be a nice RB2. Behind Montgomery, we have Aaron Jones going up against the Cardinals. He had a little bit of a touchdown drought, finally got into the end zone in week 12, had 19.9 PPR points, super strong day on the ground. I think this is a fine matchup here against the Cardinals. Then I have JT going up against the Patriots. Jonathan Taylor's production has really fallen off over the last 4 games. He's actually scored under 9 PPR points in 3 of the last 4, had a strong start to the season, definitely has not been going great as of late. It's a nice matchup here against the Patriots. They're 11th in points per game allowed. This could definitely end up being a favorable game script for him. The Colts can go ahead. JT can rack up a ton of volume. I just think the running back position is so strong. A lot of the guys ahead of him have just been delivering these really strong performances. It's tough for me to put him any higher, but it's also tough to see JT, someone as talented as him, down here as like the running back 18 and in a favorable matchup. After JT, we have a massive riser in Bucky Irving. I liked Bucky Irving heading into the season. I did think he could push for some sort of split with Rachaad White. I did not think he would be this good. Week 12, 27.1 PPR points. He's a pretty undersized running back. He's not a freak athlete. Typically, that combination does not lead to success at the NFL level. He is just such a good player. He's such a fun guy to watch, really strong pass catcher, great vision as a runner. And I think we did see out of the bye week for the Bucs, we did see a little bit of a shakeup in the usage. He actually led in snaps. And the biggest change that I did see is he had a 63% route participation. In previous weeks, him and Rachaad White were pretty much neck and neck in terms of their usage. Rachaad White was actually slightly more involved as a pass catcher. It seems like the Bucs and Liam Cohen made a real effort to get Bucky Irving more involved through the air, and it worked. He went 6 for 64, caught all 6 of his targets. Just an overall great game from Bucky. The usage was strong, and then he just has a great matchup here against the Panthers. I think he definitely could be one of these later season league winners. So Bucky Irving, very strong running back 2 play. Then my running back 20 is going to be Tony Pollard going up against the Commanders. We saw week 12, Tajay Spears once again out of the lineup, this time with a concussion, and Tony Pollard was a workhorse, 24 carries, 5 targets. Would expect that usage to go down if Tajay Spears is back. If Spears ends up missing another game with that concussion, I mean, once again, Tony Pollard, just absolute workhorse usage. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be James Conner going up against the Vikings. This is not a good matchup. The Vikings have allowed the second fewest points per game to the running back position. But on the season, this is kind of just where James Conner settled in. He's the running back 19 in points per game. I think RB21 is a fair spot with a bad matchup. Now looking at tier 4, going to start off this tier with J.K. Dobbins going up against the Falcons. Now, I will say there's no guarantee that J.K. plays this week. Left with a knee injury, did not return. You're hoping this is not something serious. You know, his injury history has been so severe. Had a great season bouncing back. I mean, the injuries he's gone through, it's insane how well he was playing this season. So you hope it's something minor. If he is playing this week, it's not a great matchup against the Falcons. Maybe the workload isn't going to be quite as, strong as what it had been in previous weeks if they're kind of easing him back in. So he's going to be a back-end RB2 for me, but probably a situation we'll have to monitor throughout the week. After Dobbins, I have DeAndre Swift going up against the Lions. The Lions have allowed the third fewest points per game to the running back position. On the season, Swift is the RB21 in points per game. I will say Roschon Johnson kind of working in on the goal line is definitely like kind of a hindrance to DeAndre Swift. You would like those goal line looks. Hasn't been that great over the last 3 weeks. Had a nice stretch in the middle of the season. I think he's a fine back end RB2 play, but definitely not a favorable matchup. I will say could be a favorable game script if they're trailing. Double-digit dogs could be very involved as a pass catcher. Already talked about Bucky Irving. My running back 24 is going to be the other committee member, Rachaad White, going up against the Panthers. The Panthers have allowed the most points per game to running backs. Rachaad White, over his last 5 games, is averaging 17.6 points per game. One thing I will point out, though, for Rachaad White is usage-wise, week 12 was not great for him because you had Bucky Irving kind of taking over in the receiving department. And then you had Sean Tucker kind of working his way in on the goal line where he only played 5 snaps, but he got at least a couple of goal line carries. That's not great if Rachaad White is getting his touchdown upside and his receiving upside kind of eaten into at the same time. So I still think he's a solid fringe RB2, especially with this matchup, but I think he's definitely kind of a net loser from the just week 12 game and the overall usage of those running backs. Couple more guys in this tier. We have Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Colts. He's been kind of, off and on. The usage has been decent. This is a nice matchup here against the Colts, though. They're allowing the 6th most points per game to the running back position. And then the final guy in this tier is going to be B-Rob. Brian Robinson going up against the Titans. I will say I'm expecting Austin Eckler to miss this game with a concussion. B-Rob hasn't been great as of late, under 9 points in 2 of his last 3 games, but I do think the Eckler injury could open some things up. Also could get him more involved as a pass catcher. The next tier is going to be tier 5. We're kind of getting into these lead backs in somewhat iffy situations, starting it off with Tyrone Tracy going up against the Cowboys. Now, on paper, this is a fun matchup for Tracy. The Cowboys have allowed the 4th most points per game to the running back position. I will say, though, I do think this defense is definitely better with Micah Parsons back. The issue here for Tyrone Tracy, first off, I'll start off with the receiving usage. Tyrone Tracy was a receiver in college. He has not been playing running back for all that long. Despite that, though, he was the running back 3 on the Giants, not the running back 3 overall, the running back 3 on the Giants behind Singletary and Eric Gray in routes. That is not a good sign. His receiving usage is something that should give him upside. He should not, or at least you don't want to see him getting the running back 3 reps in terms of the receiving usage. And he's also had back-to-back fumbles. One of them was an OT, pretty much cost them the game. The one in week 12, pretty much ended any shot of them coming back. So the fumbles are concerning. He's a day 3 pick. There doesn't have to be a ton of loyalty there. So I am somewhat concerned that the rug could just be pulled out from under him and maybe his usage takes a massive hit. But if they don't mess with his usage and he continues to operate as the running back 1, I do think this could be a good spot for him. After Tracy, I have Najee Harris going up against the Bengals. Najee, week after week, has very strong usage, 16 plus carries in 5 straight games. He just has so little upside, and it's you're just force feeding this dude for these inefficient touches, and the fantasy points aren't really there. Like, he has been getting force fed. I think he's top 5 in carries, and he has one single fantasy game over 17 PPR points. So he's fine this week as like a high-end RB3, but the usage definitely is not matching the overall fantasy production. Kind of a guy in a similar spot, Nick Chubb, going up against the Broncos, finally had a good fantasy day, got into the end zone twice, 19 PPR points. He is still just being very inefficient on the ground, 3 yards per carry on 73 attempts. You are just hoping, though, that the touchdown, production can continue. Jameis Winston raises the upside of this offense. However, they are pretty low in terms of their implied point total this week. Tough Broncos defense. And then to close out tier 5, I have the back-to-back Chiefs running backs, Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco. I would expect Pacheco to return this week. I thought he would return last week, but they had a short week. I think they play Friday, so it seemed like they didn't want to play Pacheco and then have him play again on a short week. Why would you bring him back and then rest him? So I think he will play here on Friday, and we're back in the same spot we were last week where we just don't know what the split is going to look like. But once again, it's a good matchup on paper. The Chiefs are number 2 in implied points. They're 13.5-point favorites. This should be a favorable game script for both of these running backs. We just don't know which guy is going to get the bulk of the carries or if it's just going to be, pretty much a 50-50 split. And then the final tier here, we're going to start off in that same matchup with Amir Abdullah going up against the Chiefs. Now, this is going to be assuming that both Zamir White and Madison miss. Would not be shocking given the fact that they were both doubtful. They weren't even game time decisions or questionable heading into Sunday's game. Amir Abdullah had nice usage, great snap share, great route participation, 8 carries, 6 targets, 17.5 PPR points. It's a terrible matchup against the Chiefs, but they're going to be trailing. I could see him giving you decent production through the air. Then we have Rico Dowdle going up against the Giants. Great usage in Week 12, took 22 of the 26 running back opportunities. This is just not a great offense, and the efficiency is not going to be there. Then I have Jaylen Warren going up against the Bengals. In the last 5 games, he is averaging 14.4 opportunities per game. Maybe he starts to get some more usage, some more valuable looks with Najee kind of being inefficient. He had a decent game last week, but tough to rank him any higher than a back-end RB3. Then I have Travis Etienne going up against the Texans here. Who knows what this Jags running back usage is going to look like coming out of the bye week. Seemed like Tank Bigsby was gaining some momentum early on in the season. They've gone back to Etienne. No one's really given them much. I'm not expecting Trevor Lawrence to play in this one. It's not a great matchup on paper, but they are 5.5-point underdogs, so maybe that benefits Etienne as more the pass-catching guy, the dude who's probably going to lead the backfield in a trailing game script. And then the final running back here, we have Javonte Williams. Once again, this Broncos RB situation is just a disaster. You're probably better off just never starting any of these running backs. In Week 10, this was the Audric Estime game. All of a sudden, it looks like he's going to be the workhorse. Then Week 11, Javonte Williams is the guy. He has a great game. Estime's not super involved. Then Javonte once again did lead in opportunities. He took about 50% of the total opportunities for the running backs, but he had negative rushing yards, 2.4 PPR points, and was just a complete flop in your fantasy lineup. He's going up against the Browns this week. Really just tough to, have real expectations here for Javonte. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 36. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by. Like I said at the top, won't have some of the videos later on in the week, but we'll continue to answer your guys' questions. So thank you again for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.